Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. If you've ever seen a moving walkway in an airport, you might have had a thought like most of us. Why don't we have walkways everywhere? At the airport, it seems to speed up things, at least by a little bit. You can step onto a walkway and reach your gate much faster than before. The reality is that people have been trying to install walkways in cities since 1893. Urban traffic was considered a pain even back then. This is why urban planners assumed that walkways would soon take over cities. There would be 3 core platforms. First would be a stationary platform, the second, a slow-moving walkway, and finally, a faster walkway. Despite a lot of tinkering and even live models, the walkway never took off. Takeoff is a slightly ironic term to use because it was the takeoff bit that made walkways popular again. After over 70 years, as airports got wider, people got annoyed at having to walk so much. Dallas Airport installed the first walkway. Similar walkways were then rolled out across other American airports and spread to Europe and Asia. The walkway was designed solely for urban transport, yet the problem it solved was quite different. It got people to the gates quickly, whether they were boarding or tired after a long flight. And this shows that while we as creators may assume that our product solves one problem, that's the problem that we put out, we get absolutely no traction or very little traction. And the moment we change how the problem is perceived, that very same product or service is eagerly adopted by the public. Let's take an example, shall we? At Psychotactics, we conduct a cartooning course. What problem does it solve? It promises to help you create a very unique character. A character that's like no other, one that you can call your own. That character can then be put on a website, blog, presentation, or all the millions of pieces of communication that we seem to put out. Hence, many, if not most of the people who sign up for the course use it for business purposes. But if we change the problem, we have a completely different audience. Let's say we announce that the very same course, with a few changes, is meant to create storybooks. Yes, we have AI and we have tens of thousands of illustrators. However, many people would like to write and illustrate their own books. It could be a story for kids in general, or even a one-off book that they create especially for their grandchildren. So the moment you change your audience, you can quite easily change the problem. However, even if you don't budge from the audience, you can still make tweaks to the problem. We have what seems like an identical cartooning course, very few changes, but the first problem it's solving is how to create a character for your website, your blogs, etc. The second one is about how to create a story for your grandchildren or as a legacy. And the third problem it could solve is stress relief. When people do the course, they're transported to a different space, very quiet, very meditative. And what we're seeing here is that you're going to completely different audiences the whole time just by changing the problem, not necessarily by the contents, by your product or your service. That is exactly the same. And in this way, you can expand your marketplace. Now, marketplace expansion is for people that want to do that kind of thing. Not everyone wants to just expand their marketplace. It's not that easy for a small business to simply say, okay, I'll work with this audience and I'll work with that. It's just a lot of management and a lot of work and a lot of hiring and a lot of frustration. But knowing that every product or service serves many audiences helps you to test which audience works best for you. This depends on your goal, on your strategy. Let's say that we stopped doing the cartooning course for marketing, for websites and businesses, and we had it mostly as a stress relief option. In this case, the course would be almost perennial. It would go on forever. Why? Because then the cartooning course would be like a yoga class. You'd come there every week, you'd do a little bit, you'd be quite chilled out, and it would be stress relief. So there are different options and different variations, but it all depends on the strategy. And once you have a rough idea of your goal, you can slightly tweak the problem, and now you've got a completely different audience. We'll take a second example, and that's of a product. Now, a product can also work year-round. I happen to know a person, Holly. She has a candle making business. Candles are candles, aren't they? Not really. There are paraffin-based candles, soy wax, beeswax, coconut, palm gel, blended, and other specialty waxes. Who knew? Anyway, Holly has to make a go of this business and has to sell her candles through the year. So when I went to her workshop, Holly had dozens of candles, but what caught my eye were these Christmas trees. What problem would a Christmas tree candle solve? It could be a collectible. People may want a new design every year. Now, while there are hundreds or possibly thousands of Christmas tree candles, this one candle maker can solve the collectible problem. And therefore, gift giving becomes easier, but it's repetitive. Year after year, people are buying from the same person because it's now created a tradition. It's a different audience because the problem has changed. It's gone from just being a candle that you buy, something that you light, and it's over, to something that's almost like an inheritance. And Holly could do the same thing as other candle makers. She could offer floral candles for home decor, maybe in autumn pumpkin spice candles. The point is that when you have an identical product, but you put in a different problem, you get a different audience. But doesn't this advice fly in the face of what's mentioned in the book, The Brain Audit? If you've ever read The Brain Audit from cover to cover, or even a chapter or two, you're likely to be on board with the concept of one problem. That big problem, you're told, is the core of your marketing. So if you're selling a book, that book should solve one problem. If you're selling a course, that course should deal with a singular problem. Whether it's consulting, training, or selling a physical or digital product, you should have one problem on the sales page. Isn't this different, that we're trying to deal with several problems? No, the advice is still consistent. That advice doesn't change. The issue is the sales page itself. The issue is the sales message itself. When you're transmitting this message to somebody else, you still need to focus on one problem. You still need to expand that one singular problem. You can't go bouncing between several problems. What we're talking about in this podcast is having different audiences, and each of that audience hears that singular problem. So when you're talking about candles and it being a collectible, well, that audience is only hearing collectible. They're not hearing about something else to do with candles. And this one fact has to be extremely clear. When you're communicating, you have to have a headline that has a problem, the first paragraph, the second paragraph, that's expanding that very same problem. You're not jumping from problem to problem to problem. That's not what this is about. This is about having that one problem and then going to that one audience, and then having a second problem and then testing it out with a second audience, and then the third or the fourth or the 17th, whatever you want to do. But it's still one problem to one audience and driving home that problem. And that's how you can test accurately, and that's how you can find a way to run your business. You know, method that's sensible, that's good for you, that brings in the revenue, but also brings in huge amounts of time. The eventual goal that's true for most of us is that we want to be comfortable. We don't want to think about money all the time. And therefore, getting that audience that's consistent and will return over and over again is very crucial. Which is why if your problem, the problem that you're transmitting is not working, then you'll need to go to a different audience. Or if you want to change your strategy, then you start working with several audiences at the same time and see which one of the problems work. We all create things. The walkway was created for urban transport. It ended up in airports. Nobody could have predicted how that would turn out. And yes, that's how it did. Who knows where your product or your service will end up, but it will find that audience. So keep looking for it. And if you want to talk about this, you want to discuss how your audience is going to work, what's your goal, then the correct place to be, the most sane place to be is 5000 BC. You have to be a member. Go to 5000bc.com and you won't be able to sign up right away. You'll have to wait for 21 days, after which you will get entry. It's just a cooling off period. You don't want to just rush into everything. So go to 5000bc.com and check it out today. Yes, it's another membership site. You've probably joined other membership sites before, but you'll find this place is completely different because you get answers to your questions on an individual basis. So go to 5000bc.com today and I'll see you there. Bye-bye.